So I watched Saltburn last night. There's a few films each year which really divide opinion, which really get the online film community riled up into a ball of raging, contrasting beliefs. And looking at the reviews before I went to see this, it was clear that Emerald Fennell's second feature film, much like her debut, was one of these special movies. And I don't know about you, but I always find films like these incredibly exciting, even if I end up disliking them, because it's just so interesting that two people can experience the exact same piece of art, and one of them can give it half a star and one of them can give it 5 stars. That's just interesting to me. That's like one of the main reasons art exists, I feel like. But the question is, where do I personally land on the Saltburn spectrum? Well, I'd say for the first hour I was completely into it. Yes, I can see why people find Saltburn self-indulgent and a bit cliché. The trailers seemed kind of cheesy as well, but I don't know, I thought the first half was very engrossing. Basically, in this film we follow Oliver, played by the consistently exceptional Barry Keoghan, as he traverses the dystopian nightmare that is Oxford University in 2006. He eventually becomes, let's say, enamoured with Jacob Elordi's character Felix, who is essentially your standard, incredibly posh and confident English uni student, and is invited to stay at his family's vast, exuberant estate for the summer. I'm going to talk about spoilers in a bit, but for now I won't ruin anything, and I'll just say, weird stuff happens for about another hour, until the movie just sort of ends. I think a good way to tell if a film is working for you is how often you check the time. Obviously, when you're watching an amazing film, you wouldn't ever do this, and for the first hour of Saltburn, I didn't either. I was actually rather hypnotised by basically everything that was on screen. The story was incredibly intriguing, I loved the ambiguity and blurry morality of the characters, and I personally found the cinematography to be outstanding. It's of course shot in 4:3, also known as Academy ratio, and I've seen some people on the internet roll their eyes at this and the cinematography as a whole, saying, oh, it's just trying to be arty, it's trying too hard. But like, come on man, I'm sorry, but this just looks good. In fact, I wish this ratio was used a lot more, especially with character-driven stories, as it just makes the film feel more personal and claustrophobic. Don't get me wrong, the Barry Lyndons and Lawrence of Arabias of the world should be as wide and expansive as possible, but I do love the Academy ratio. I'd be fine if like half of all movies looked like this, honestly. I also really enjoyed the mid-noughties time period, which I've realised is just a brilliant era to tell stories. It strikes that good middle ground between having a modern aesthetic, the characters own phones, and it feels relatively contemporary, while still being set before the meteoric rise of social media, which I feel like is less rich soil to tell compelling stories in. Does that make sense? I don't know, it's just a good middle ground. But anyway, overall I loved the first half of Saltburn. It was intriguing and darkly funny and perfectly paced. I genuinely did not understand why people's opinions were so split on it. However, getting into the second half, I found that once the film actually had to start paying off on the things it had built up to in the first hour, it began to stagger a decent amount. I ended up checking my watch like 5 times. I don't exactly know what happened to the airtight pacing of this movie, but yeah, the second half is definitely messy. Not terrible by any means, in fact, I think overall I still really like Saltburn. It's definitely one of the more interesting and memorable films I've seen in 2023, but it just seems to lose its way a bit near the end of the second act. It just seemed like it was trying to do a bit too much, trying to balance a few too many plates, and not all of it worked for me. For example, I found most of the shocking erotic moments, of which there are a fair few, just to be like a bit silly and edgy for no real reason. The first couple I was like, fine, but they just kept on coming. I was like, okay, we get it. And I do think this alludes to Saltburn's biggest flaw, what some are calling its downfall. The film is essentially just too overindulgent. By the end it wants to be Call Me By Your Name, and The Talented Mr. Ripley, and The Favourite, and Brideshead Revisited, and Get Out, and about 50 other things all at once. And I really think Fennell should have just chosen a few of them. I think this all leads to a final act which just kind of feels awkward and a bit disjointed, and slightly less meaningful than the film clearly wants to be, especially with the ending and how certain things are revealed. I don't think it ruins the movie, like I'd still genuinely call this one of my favourite films of the year, just due to the sheer audacity of it. But it certainly weakens the experience slightly. I'm gonna need to get into spoilers now, so if you haven't seen Saltburn, definitely click off this video and go watch it. I would 100% recommend seeing it in the cinema. But anyway, spoiler time. So it's revealed at the end of the movie that Oliver has masterminded the entire story, basically. If you remember, we get that montage of him puncturing Felix's tyre so he can lend him his own bike, the bit at the pub where he's pretending to have no money. This stuff really shocked me. I didn't see it coming at all. I kind of thought Oliver had become mad over the course of the movie, but it was interesting to discover he was like that from the beginning. However, this montage also reveals things which I kind of thought we were supposed to have just inferred. For example, Oliver framing Farley, I think his name was, sending an email from his phone talking about how he's gonna steal stuff from the estate. I didn't even realise it was up in the air whether Oliver had done that or not. And it's the same with him killing Felix at the end. I thought the audience was supposed to know that stuff already, like, it was pretty obviously him, but the movie plays it off as this huge reveal which is totally going to blow your mind. And it was just kind of inconsistent. Like, I think perhaps the screenplay's final 20 pages needed one more draft, you know? Like, what was the point of all of Oliver's schemes? Did he really just want the fortune and the estate? Like, what was the whole thing about? I don't know. This film just lost me a bit in the second half. Don't get me wrong, it's still firing on most cylinders. I just thought the pacing sort of fell off a cliff, and the payoff didn't exactly fully live up to what I was expecting. However, I still did really like it. The moment where Felix drives Oliver to his parents' house was phenomenal, easily one of my favourite scenes of the year, and I do just like that sort of blend of realism and surrealism this film executes so well. And I think overall Saltburn is a success, you know. I personally don't mind when a film is a bit too ambitious and tries a bit too much, because at least it means the filmmaker was going for the jugular, you know? It's especially nice to see in this modern cinema landscape where so much of what comes out just feels so safe and bland. So yeah, overall, I think this was a pretty good movie and a very enjoyable watch. Please let me know what you thought of it in the comment section, and I will catch you in the next one.